In the closing years of World War II, Nazi Germany was desperate to create the ultimate superweapon, a tank so large, so powerful, that it would be unstoppable on the battlefield. The Panzer VIII Maus, a colossal 188-ton tank, was the answer, but despite its incredible size and engineering, it never saw combat. So what went wrong? And how did the Maus, the largest tank ever built, fail to change the course of the war? Let's find out. Story of the Maus begins not just an engineering challenge, but as a reflection of Hitler's military vision. By 1942, Hitler had become obsessed with creating possibly the most powerful war machines, believing that sheer brute force and overwhelming firepower would secure Germany's dominance on battlefield. By this point in the war, Hitler had already championed the development of Tiger and Panther tanks, which were among the most advanced of their time. However, his fascination with superweapons pushed him further. He became convinced that even larger and more heavily armored tank could single-handedly turn the tide of the war, especially against the increasing power of Soviet forces on the Eastern Front. Hitler's vision was clear: a land battleship, a fortress on tracks that could outmatch anything that Allies could deploy. He wanted a tank that was invincible and colossal in every sense of the word. Ferdinand Porsche, one of the Germany's most famous automotive engineers, Porsche was already well established, having designed several vehicles for the Nazi regime. But he also was a man known for his ambition and bold ideas. Hitler personally appointed Porsche as the chief designer of this project. Porsche's company, which had already been involved in development of earlier German tanks, was tasked with designing the ultimate war machine. Hitler's directive was simple: build the heaviest, most heavily armored tank ever conceived, capable of destroying enemy vehicles. Porsche's team began sketching what would later become the Maus. At this time, Porsche was competing with another German firm for contracts to develop the Wehrmacht's tank fleet. Porsche's close relationship with the Hitler gave him an edge, but this project was unlike any other. The Maus was more than just a tank. It was an engineering marvel, but also a symbol of Germany's overreach. Porsche believed he could deliver what Hitler wanted, and the project was officially approved in 1942. Hitler's demands for the Maus were extreme. He wanted a tank so heavily armored that no Allied or Soviet weapon could penetrate it. Early specifications called for armor up to 240 mm thick on the front, far beyond an existing tanks. Hitler also wanted it armed with the most powerful weaponry available. After much discussion, it was decided that the Maus would feature a 128 mm KWK-44 gun, capable of devastating enemy tanks far from over 3 kilometers away, with a secondary 75 mm coaxial gun to complement it. But these massive specifications came at a cost. As Porsche's design team began to work on the Maus, they quickly realized that achieving Hitler's vision would lead to a host of technical problems. Even as the Porsche refined the design, Hitler kept pushing for an even bigger, more heavily armed tank. This constant escalation in requirements caused delays and increased the complexity of the project. By the time the design was finalized, the Maus was no longer just a tank. It was a monstrous machine that pushed the limits of the German engineering to the breaking point. Sorry for disturbing, but if you liked the video so far, please consider giving a like for more videos like this. The Maus was truly a beast in every sense. It was designed to weigh over 180 tons, with armor up to 240 mm thick on the front, making it nearly invulnerable to enemy fire. But this extreme weight came with major drawbacks. First and foremost was mobility. The Maus was painfully slow. It had a top speed of just 18 km per hour on roads and even slower off-road. Moving this enormous machine across a battlefield would be a logistical nightmare. In fact, bridges couldn't support its weight, so the Maus would have to ford rivers, a risk task for such a slow-moving vehicle. Then there was its firepower. The Maus was armed with a 128mm gun, capable of destroying virtually any Allied tank from extreme distances. It also featured a secondary 75mm coaxial gun. Its firepower was fearsome, but the Maus' massive threat added even more weight, further hindering its mobility. The Maus project wasn't just hindered by the weight and mobility issues. It also faced serious technical problems. Powering such a gigantic tank required an enormous engine, and Porsche's engineers struggled to find a solution. The Maus was eventually fitted with a V12 Daimler-Benz engine, but it wasn't enough. The engine was underpowered for such a behemoth, and it suffered from mechanical failures during the testing. Fuel consumption was another problem. The Maus guzzled fuel at an astonishing rate, making it impractical to operate for the extended periods. Even if it managed to make it to the front lines, keeping it supplied with fuel would have been nearly impossible for the already overstretched German army. Despite these challenges, Hitler remained committed to the project, but by 1944 Germany was losing the war and resources were becoming scarce. The Maus was expensive to produce, requiring vast amount of steel, which was desperately needed elsewhere. Only two prototypes were completed, V1, which was unarmed, and V2, which was fully equipped for combat. Testing revealed many of the problems that engineers had feared: mechanical failures, engine breakdowns, and its sheer impracticality for battlefield use. By the 1945, as the war drew to a close, the Maus was abandoned. The two prototypes were left unfinished, and the dream of an indestructible supertank faded with the Germans' defeat. In April 1945, as Soviet forces advanced into Germany, they captured the Maus prototypes at the Kammersdorf proving grounds. Rather than allowing them to fall into enemy hands, the Germans destroyed the first prototype. The second, however, was captured mostly intact by Soviet forces, who then combined the parts of both Maus tanks to create a single operational vehicle for testing. Today, the only surviving Maus tank can be found at the Kubinka Tank Museum in Russia. It stands as a testament to Nazi Germany's over-ambitious engineering projects, an example of what happens when technology outpaces practicality. The Panzer VIII Maus represents one of the many technological dead ends of World War II. While its firepower and armor were undeniably impressive, it was simply too large, too slow, and too difficult to deploy effectively on the battlefield. Germans' obsession with bigger and more complex weapons, like the Maus, came at the cost of practicality and efficiency, a lesson that would be learned by military engineers for decades to come. Though it never saw combat, the Maus remains a fascinating symbol of the extremes of warfare. The ambition behind the project was immense, but in the end, the Maus wasn't more than a gigantic lumbering failure. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe and hit the bell for more military history content. Leave a comment below on what topic you would like us to cover next time. See you!